Hello and welcome to Muskoka Today. I'm Jane Loftus. Joining me in the studio are three very interesting individuals, Dr. Richard Riley, Dr. James Jenkinson, and Dr. Deborah Gollage. It's nice to have you all here today joining us. Nice to see you again, Deborah.
Yes.
It's been a little while. What we're about to discuss is the controversy about silver mercury fillings in our teeth. And I guess first of all we'll speak with you, Rick. And are you considered rebels in the dental industry because of this controversy? And perhaps we could explain what it is.
I would have to say yes, we're very much rebels, and unfortunately that's the case. I wish it weren't so. It's an uphill battle, and we feel there's a concern out there, and we're trying to inform the public as well as our confreres, but it's slow, it's taking time, and it's programs like yours that will help us get the message out to people.
Well, it's a fascinating topic, and the information that you sent me was certainly food for thought, and I know our viewers will be most interested in learning about it. And it is a partnership, I gather, amongst the three of you. And Deborah, you are involved in the nutrition and homeopathic end of things. And now a patient comes to see you first and they are referred, or?
Well, they generally phone the clinic, and we have a girl who's basically putting the whole operation together, seeing that the patient has all the preliminary tests done. There's hair analysis, blood work, and urine done. They'll come and see me for a homeopathic assessment to begin with, because we're integrating using the natural medicines as well as just the straight removals, so that the person's in the best state of health for when the removal occurs, and then afterwards can be detoxified using botanical medicines and homeopathics to regain their health.
Now, Jim, maybe we can ask you, what is the problem with mercury fillings?
Well, the basic problem is one of informed consent initially, and that is that patients have had silver mercury fillings placed in their mouths for a number of years under the guise of them being silver fillings. Mercury is a known toxin, so you don't like to mention that it's in there. However, it represents slightly over 50% of the composition of the average silver filling that's placed in there. So that's basically where we came from in the first place, was that informing patients that this was there and that there were other alternative materials that could be used instead of the mercury-containing fillings.
Well, what sorts of risks are we talking about, Rick? Can you tell us what's the risk?
Well, as Jim already mentioned, mercury is one of the most potent toxins to our own cells. It's cytotoxic. A lot of animal studies are showing connections with kidney damage, liver damage, and neural tissue damage. The other concern is that it is easily transported through the body and easily stored, so it's a long-term accumulative effect. It's building up, and until studies are done to prove its safety, which none have been done to date, we don't believe it's prudent to be putting a known toxin in people's bodies. And it's a chronic 24-hour day in, day out exposure to a known toxin. And there are many research papers being produced worldwide that are showing a lot of alarming information.
What is the difference between organic and inorganic mercury?
Well, the organic form is much more potent. Methylmercury, it seems to be able to hitchhike everywhere. It's able to bond onto other protein molecules, and all of our cell membranes are coated with that, so it just hitchhikes everywhere in the body, and that's how it gets around.
Mercury itself, inorganic mercury, is just a plain out-and-out toxin. It kills cells, so you're actually a little better off if it just plain kills them in the first place, whereas methylmercury, which is the organic form, has the ability to cross through our cell membranes into our brains and all the rest of it, and there it becomes mutagenic, and it has the opportunity to alter the way the cells function. So when I say you're better off if it kills the cell outright, most cells that are killed can be replaced, with the exception of the brain cells. But once they're altered by the methylmercury, they remain in place for many, many years, and that altered function is what causes some of the illnesses we're seeing.
Now, how does this differ between the air that we're breathing, and we're inhaling, I assume, mercury, and the food that we're consuming, fish, etc., and some of the water that we're drinking. Are we just being poisoned altogether?
Well, that's a fact, actually, Jane, because the World Health Organization has proven beyond a doubt that the largest single-point source of mercury is the dental filling in your mouth. It's larger than the mercury in the air, the food, and the water that we drink, considerably so. And it's a chronic, as I said, low-dose source. So there is a difference.
Now, it's startling, the information that I have read, that they are linking this to multiple sclerosis and various forms of cancer, would I be correct in saying, and problems in the lymph system and the immune system? Are you seeing this, or have you been able to identify this?
As far as being a direct linkage, it's very hard to say the one causes the other. On the other hand, it's relatively interesting to see how the removal of the mercury-containing fillings and other sources of mercury, such as dietary types, followed by some form of therapy, such as Deborah would be involved in, to remove the mercury that's already in the system, how much these people improve. I think to say that one is a causative agent of the other is a little difficult at this stage, because basically diseases like MS and lupus and so on are thought to be diseases of unknown origin. But the fact that the people improve so dramatically and respond so well to these therapies indicates to us that it has a major bearing on the progress of the disease.
So you're hoping to bridge the gap here between the physicians and yourselves?
That's correct. We're trying to involve the physicians very much. Just to add to what Jim said, you can comment that there are MS-like symptoms or lupus-like symptoms that we feel are associated with the heavy metal toxicity, in particular mercury. And in addition to what Jim was saying, Hal Huggins in Colorado Springs is demonstrating with his studies of blood chemistry that there are definite changes in the blood chemistry when you remove the mercury fillings from a person's body. And there are definite subjective changes in their symptoms too.
Now, our viewers watching this program who may be concerned about this, how does one know if they are being affected by the mercury, and what is the process if they'd like to change it?
I think it's fair to say that nobody is immune to mercury. It's a neurological toxin. So everybody's going to suffer, I feel, some effect. Some people more than others, probably predisposed by possibly genetics or stresses in their lives or whatever. But I know personally that I have had patients where I've treated and they've got better, and then they've regressed and they've got better, and I've sent them down and they've had their amalgams removed and they've got better and stayed better. And to me, that's very impressive.
Now, is that a long, lengthy process? I mean, when I think of that, and you sort of think of feeling your teeth, and now there's obviously a problem. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be thinking this. What is involved in removing what's been done?
Well, there's a particular protocol to follow. If you've been studying the Huggins technique, we would have someone see Deborah for at least 2 weeks prior to put them on supplementation, to have some of the blood work started and hair analysis and so on, urinalysis done. So you have a background database, and it also starts detoxifying them. And then when Jim and myself or any other individual who's involved in this, we treat them under rubber dam. That's to protect them from swallowing any of the particulate matter.
Excuse me, maybe you could explain what a rubber dam is.
Sure, a rubber dam is just a protective barrier that goes over the teeth and protects the oral cavity from any debris going down the throat. Even though you're using high volume suction, this is just an adjunct to prevent material from going into the body. And they would wear a nose cone so they're breathing oxygen. And we use special suctions that wrap around the tooth to remove as much of the mercury vapor as possible. And we're trying to get set up to do IV vitamin C as well. It helps to chelate and bind any free mercury that's in the bloodstream.
Is it beneficial to the patient to start taking vitamin C before they even think about this in higher doses?
Yes. Part of the program.
That's part of the program. And the other thing Jim and I are aware of now from the studies we've been doing, there's an immune cycle with each patient, and it's a 7, 14, 21-day cycle, so you don't want to treat an individual at the wrong time of the cycle. You don't want appointments to go beyond 2 hours. You don't want to stress these people out because they're already stressed. And
this goes contrary to the way most dentists operate. You know, if we're going to see you, we'll see you on every Monday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'll just go 1, 2, 3, 4 and do all 4 corners of your mouth. And
that's right.
that can actually put an individual into a collapse due to the effect of this immune cycle. So, you know, many people who think they're doing the right thing by having their amalgams removed and they want to do it in 1 month and get it all over with, actually end up worse off for doing it. So it's not something you want to attack without having done some research into it and know precisely how to look after the patient's best interest.
Should a patient perhaps get one removed and then see how they feel and then come back to you, or do you set this up so that, yes, all 3 or 4 or 50 have to be removed?
Yeah, in certain circumstances, particularly patients with leukemia and Lou Gehrig's disease, this sort of thing, you don't want to stress them at all. You want to have your appointments limited to half an hour or less. They may not actually get a final restoration placed in the tooth once the filling is removed. They may just have something temporarily put in there, get the offending one out, and move on. But
when Jim says the offending one, something else comes into play here that we haven't mentioned, and that is the current that's given off of these batteries. They really are batteries. You have dissimilar metals in an electrolyte, saliva.
Yes.
And Dr. Huggins discovered quite by accident that when he removed the fillings with the highest negative microamperage, his success rate in recovery of the patients was exponential. It increased dramatically from, I think, a 10% level to somewhere in the 90s. And they're not really sure why that occurs, but they do know that there are very, very high currents given off these fillings. And it seems to impact on how people recover.
So how many would you suggest then that people have removed if they have a mouthful of silver, and that includes bridges? What would you do? That's a complex operation for you people.
It depends on the individual. Every individual is different, and what you would want to do is measure the electrical charges off the various fillings, bridges, whatever, in there, and look to the most negative corner of the mouth first. And if it happens to be a sick individual, the most negative filling.
Is there a certain device that you can measure the mercury toxicity? Just one way, or you must go through the blood work, the hair, the urinalysis?
There's no one single device that will measure your toxicity level. There are many different parameters you can judge by, and you mentioned some of them. The fact that mercury is coming off the fillings has been proven. You can get a Jerome meter and you can measure the plume of mercury coming from that. You can, with a readometer, measure the microamperage of the current. So you know what's happening. It's well documented. But that's about as far as it goes. You look at a psychological profile. You look at their background medically. And Deborah is very much a big help in that respect. She does a lot of our screening of people.
So I suppose the anesthetic then, does it last for very long, or is it a local anesthetic, a general anesthetic? How do you perform this?
Yeah, we're looking at it at the moment under local anesthesia. In Britain they're doing it under general anesthetic. One of the interesting sidelights is that although we suggest they take vitamin C as an aspect for helping to eliminate the mercury as they go along, you certainly don't take vitamin C before your appointment because
orally,
because that interferes with the local anesthetic, which might make their appointment somewhat less pleasant.
Just to clarify there, Jim means you don't take it orally. You can have it IV. There's a difference.
I see. As long as it's in the bloodstream, but it's not.
That might be a good note for anybody having any kind of dentistry done, not to take a high dose of vitamin C
before you go in.
Well, what is your viewpoint on the other metals? Tin, copper, other amalgams made of metal. Is mercury just the big one, or?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because mercury has been the major bad guy. But as Rick alluded to earlier, the silver amalgam filling is about 6 different metals all put together. Most of the crown and bridge alloys have anywhere from 5 to 20 different metals put in them. And most of these things have not been tested for safety in the mouth. And so consequently, there's a wide variety of things going on there. Any mixture of metals will produce an electric response in the mouth. And so I think we're attacking mercury to start with until people get aware that there is a problem with some of the metals that are in their mouth. And now the researchers that started with mercury have moved on into other areas themselves and are looking at all these. So I think it's the current dental developers have come up with a new amalgam which does not contain mercury, and they're touting this as being
but all the metals still are there.
Has everything else in there. So I mean,
got,
they've gotten rid of mercury, but they haven't solved the problem. They've just substituted a different toxin for mercury.
It's reached the point where you cannot really place into a person's body anything that you don't know is biocompatible with that body. And by that I mean that you need to test in some way, shape, or form whether or not the person responds negatively or positively or neutrally to the material you're putting in their body. So this applies to surgeons, physicians, dentists, whoever.
So you could be opening up a very wide spectrum here when you're entering into this, and it obviously must be the next stage in dentistry and medical health per se. It's prevention. Are you finding this, Deborah, as well with the natural path?
Well, in terms of what we're doing at the office here, if somebody comes in, we'll use, as I said, homeopathics. A lot of, some people in California, there's a group of, they call naturopathic dentists that are using homeopathic of mercury to detox the patient and to help build their system so that when they do actually have the removals, there's not such a negative response to the onslaught, to the gassing off during the removal. And that works sometimes, but what I'm finding is more accurate is to use what homeopathic would be normally used for the person, you know, based on their set of symptoms when they come in. Sometimes that is homeopathic of mercury, sometimes that's what they need. A lot of times it isn't. A lot of times it's their constitutional remedy or the remedy they need for the specific illness that they're suffering from. And that's where the homeopathic diagnosis, I think, is key to, you know, set them up in the best sort of physical condition that we can get them in, and then using things like selenium and zinc and things that we know that help bind mercury and take it out of the system. There's certain fibers like alginates and pectin that work very, very well on mercury. All these kinds of things are now being investigated, and there's a lot of nutritional research right now on heavy metal toxicity, and I'm scanning this all the time, looking for new adjuncts that we can use to cleanse our patients as quickly as possible.
So obviously you're working hand in hand very
we
closely.
You can see how important
we meet
this
with all
is.
the, you know, on each patient we'll meet and say, well, I'm doing this and you're doing this and here's the game plan for this lady or here's the game plan for this fellow. And we know at all stages what the next step is for this patient and, you know, what we expect from them in terms of recovery rates and that sort of thing.
When the amalgam is removed, what are you replacing it with? Is there just a gaping hole there?
Well, this is where we've been using Deborah extensively, because one of the things you don't want to do is take them, as it's been said before, out of the frying pan and into the fire. You replace it with something that is no more compatible. The patient is not going to get better. So Deborah has been testing a number of the materials that we use in the office and some of the ones that we no longer use to see what these people react to, because everybody will have a different profile as to what is compatible with them. And so far we haven't found anybody who's compatible with the mercury fillings, so that's not a viable replacement. But
it's no surprise to us.
No surprise.
Do you have any statistics?
In what shape?
As far as the how many people are affected that have been tested, would it be
there's a group
85 or 90% or any rough idea?
Well, the group I mentioned did all those biocompatible.
Yeah, there was a group actually out of Colorado that did 3,400 patients and tested them against about 1,000 different dental materials. And they set up a whole schedule of which ones were the most toxic, which were the least. And I mean, this is based on an average. Now, that doesn't mean that a particular individual won't blow the numbers right out of the average there. I mean, what is compatible for you and not for the other person, maybe just related to your genetic predispositions. Sure. So we have in our office right now materials that have very high compatibility ratings according to those schedules, but we still have to test people individually because somebody is going to come along someday who does not fit that order, and we have to go.
Particularly when you're dealing with very sick people. That's very important.
Yeah,
and that's why it's a team approach, because you have to know what they will react to and what they won't react to.
Well, obviously you're right out on the front lines here, and the forerunners of this. The three of you have just returned from Colorado, as
That's
you mentioned.
correct, yes.
Can you share some of your experiences there and the knowledge with our viewers? How does Canada stand or rate amongst all the other countries? Are other countries acknowledging that this is a problem?
Oh, yes.
And are we behind?
More so in Europe, I'd
Yes,
say.
yes, Europe is way ahead of us
Are they?
right now. It's basically Sweden and Germany have both taken steps to eliminate the usage of amalgam. Sweden by 1997, I believe. There's a partial ban by 95.
In both Germany and Sweden now, you cannot place amalgam fillings in any woman of childbearing age or any child under the age of 14, I believe. I think that's the way it works right now. And they, as Jim said, by 1997 expect a total ban. They're way ahead of us right now.
Now, and in the United States, I understand in the state of California, they are fining dentists who are using mercury. Is this true?
They're allowed to use it,
No.
but they have to post a sign saying that mercury is toxic, and I believe that they can't use it again in pregnant women or children under 6, I think it is.
We're getting to this whole issue of informed consent, Jane. I mean, it's, in the state of California, according to Proposition 65, you must inform the public if you are placing a known toxin in their body. And this is how they were able to achieve this notification that's required in all dental offices still using the mercury silver fillings. So by law, they must post it.
And that's where you may be getting a bit about the fines, because if somebody places it without informing the patient, then they
can be fined.
Yes.
Well, now how is the Ontario Dental Association or the Canadian Dental Association reacting to this information?
Well, their most recent response was that they have put the issue to rest around the safety of amalgam, and it's quite safe. And currently, in all of the, basically the standards of the Royal College of Dental Surgeons to suggest that that mercury or any of your dental fillings could be causing you harm is an unethical suggestion. However, I think in the light of the research that's coming out from a number of other different sources, it's going to be pretty hard for them to hold this stand for too much longer.
We feel so strongly about it, Gene, that we wrote a letter to Ruth Greer, our provincial health minister, and Diane Marlowe, the federal health minister, and sent copies to the RCDS, our governing body, the ODA, and the CDA. And to date, we haven't had any response back other than from the CDA stating that they have, they thanked us for the information package we sent, which was 2 inches thick of scientific data, and they said that they had referred this on to their committee of materials, and we've heard nothing further.
And when did you send this?
March the 17th.
Are you expecting to hear something back?
We asked for an audience with Ruth Greer, or to at least have the opportunity to discuss with her the material that we had referred on to her.
Are you planning any workshops where you can get together with other dentists and
We'd
share
like to
your
do that
knowledge?
very much.
Very much so.
We've already had a great deal of interest in our own dental community, the Huntsville District Dental Society. We've met with them on a number of occasions, and there are a few fellows there that are expressing some interest and looking to making Huntsville a mercury-free area. But,
Which is encouraging.
That is
it's
very.
starting to happen.
Yes. Well, our viewers watching at home, they may be asking the question, how do I know if I should be seeing either of these dentists? And seeing Deborah, are there any sorts of signs that we should be aware of that indicates we're having a problem?
There's a case, there is quite a list, as a matter of fact, that's associated with mercury toxicity. But I think anybody suffering from chronic illness,
Chronic fatigue
and what I
in
see in my
particular.
own practice are people that have an illness, are treated for it, and might hold for a while, and then they get sick again. And they keep getting sick again, no matter what they try to do for themselves. Their health just doesn't seem to improve. That's a real, I think, red light.
The other parameter, Jane, is that if they have been investigated by conventional Western medicine to try and determine the cause of particular symptoms that they're experiencing, and they can't seem to find the etiology, the cause of this, then I think it behooves them to at least explore if they have mercury fillings in their mouth, to at least explore that avenue. And there really is truly a plethora of symptoms to look at, and that's where Deborah would come in, and she would screen them for that sort of thing and direct them.
Well, something that we haven't mentioned, when the patients are in your office and you are operating on these patients, are you in danger of inhaling the mercury
Very
and your
much so.
Quite
assistance?
definitely. Yeah.
So what do you do about this?
Well, we've been working, in fact, that was our main reason why we eliminated the use of mercury in our office 10 years ago, was that we were concerned about our own health, as far as the health of our staff as well as our patients. And this was before a lot of this information was readily available. We're currently looking at having different scavenging systems put in to basically absorb the mercury from the air and dispatch it away from us. And currently, Rick and I are looking at a basic mask setup which will allow us to breathe fresh air behind our masks rather than be exposed constantly to
the assistants as well. The
well.
assistant and the dentist are working right over this whole thing. The patient's protected, but we are not, and we're breathing this in, day out.
Are you tested? Do you somehow
Yes.
have yourselves
We were
tested
tested, and
regularly?
we both are
Yeah.
mercury toxic.
Both of
Are
us are
you?
carrying, and it's interesting because I myself have been free of mercury fillings since 1983, and Rick more recently. So the fact that we're carrying still a
Interesting.
mercury load is an indication that we're picking it up just by taking these out of our patients. We're getting exposed. We both got very strong immune responses to mercury.
Well, obviously, if you're both this way, then someone in 1983 believed in what you were saying or your own beliefs and removed them for you.
Well, that's interesting. We've looked after each other. Jim was more fortunate than I was in that he did not have much to remove, but I did not listen to my own family dentist years ago, so I paid the price. Jim had a lot of work to do with me.
But the point is that probably dentists are more at risk than anybody in the public, and if you look at the health status of dentists as a general rule, you're going to find a very sick group of people as a general rule. I think right now the last study we saw was the average age at death of dentists in Wisconsin is 52.
Which is a very disconcerting figure for me since I just turned 52.
Yeah. But they die of natural causes at 52, so it's okay.
But you're mercury-free pretty
I am
well.
So we hope to have them around a little longer.
Yes, I hope so. Well, also, we should just briefly mention, too, that statistically with dentists, there are high suicide rates and high divorce rates.
That's correct.
Do you believe that this is linked either to personality or to
believe.
mercury?
If you look at the symptom profile for mercury toxicity, irritability and mental difficulties, brain fog, the rest of these things are all symptoms that, I mean, how many people have a calm dentist? It doesn't really apply. So it's...
It's an oxymoron.
Exactly.
True.
So, you know, I think that this is something the dentists themselves should be looking at, you know, even more so than the individuals, because they are exposed chronically day after day to higher levels.
Aside from the dentist's concern and health, I think the one thing we would feel really good about if this material were banned from the market, if it were no longer placed in children's mouths, then we'd at least start a generation free of this known toxin. That's really what we're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see the outcome for the year 2000 in this country as far as mercury amalgams, silver mercury amalgams? What's your prediction?
The message is getting out there and slowly.
It's the public, I think, that are taking
Yeah.
their health in their hands more and more. I mean, by the year,
That's
I can
critical
see
what
it.
you just said, Deb. It's
You
the
know,
public that will
they're
actually
gonna
bring this
say,
about.
I don't want this anymore, just like they'll say, I don't want drugs or I don't want surgery, I want a better answer. That's why people like myself are busy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to say the same thing when they go to the dentist's chair. They're going to sit there and say, I don't want mercury.
So it's up to the public to start lobbying
Mm-hmm.
against it.
It's public that's going to be, you know, informed and smart enough to say no.
It's a positive health choice not to have this placed in your mouth, is what we believe.
Now, once again, people watching, if they are interested in obtaining more information or having this procedure done, how should they go about doing this and contacting you three individuals?
I think they should work at educating themselves first,
Right on.
because I think that the patient's standpoint, it's not something they ever want to feel was forced upon them, because there's a great number of people out there that show no outward symptoms of anything. And, you know, for those people, they may say, I'm fine. And I certainly wouldn't recommend that unless they felt that they wanted this done, that they do it.
Now, where could they obtain the information, Jim, to begin educating themselves?
Well, the information is available from us. It's available from another number of sources. Deb has some. The Holistic Dental Association in Colorado publishes a good book on it. The Huggins Diagnostic Center in Colorado publishes a number of books. There's,
That's correct.
in fact, even at the library, patients have come in saying that they've picked up a book by Sam Ziff called The Toxic Time Bomb at the public library. And
Which is
all of
excellent.
these things go into the history of mercury in dentistry and talk about the symptoms. And I think the patient wants to do this from a standpoint that they feel they're convinced already that this is affecting them. They don't want to have somebody come in there and say, you need this done.
You need this done. It's still an option.
This will cure you, because that's the last thing we want to suggest.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much, all three of you, for coming in today and sharing this knowledge with us. It's been a very, very interesting program, and I hope you'll return, because I'm sure we could go on for a much longer length of time. Thank you for watching.